Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the webinar, The Essentials of Resource Planning in a Downturn, Optimizing People and Productivity with AI. I'm Robert Stickle, and I'll be today's moderator. I'm also joined by today's speakers, Andy Jordan and Jose Levy, who both have a deep expertise in the project and portfolio management space. Andy Jordan is a globally recognized thought leader in PPM, and he's the president of Ruffison Consulting and a frequent keynote speaker and trusted advisor to organizations around the world. Andy has worked with countless PMOs to improve strategic alignment, optimize resources, and drive business value, especially in uncertain economic times. His perspectives are not only grounded in real world experience, but often cited by leading publications and professional organizations in the PPM space. Also with us is Jose Levy, who is a senior director here at OnePlan. And Jose brings a wealth of hands-on experience guiding enterprise-level clients through the complexities of digital transformation, strategic planning, and resource management. He's worked with organizations of all sizes to help OnePlan implement unique ways that drive efficiency, transparency, and strategic results for those organizations. As we go through this webinar and you have questions, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature or the Q&A or comments box that GoToWebinar provides. We will address these during the webinar in a live Q&A at the end of the session. And if for some reason your question does not get answered, we will respond via email. That way we're not leaving it hanging. With that, thank you again. And I will now turn the presentation over to Andy and Jose.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you everybody for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us. All right, let's get started. Let's get into this. We've got quite a bit to cover, and I want to make sure I give you plenty of time for Jose as well. Here's the agenda. We're going to go through this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this particular slide, but just want to sort of give you a little bit of context that I want to give you some background as to why I think it's important to be talking about what we're going to talk about today. Then we'll do most of the content, but then I want to actually make it real for you. I've been to too many of these webinars where you leave and think, oh yeah, that was okay, but now what? So I want to try and give you a little bit of that now what. So we'll talk a little bit about that, making it happen. Jose is going to talk a little bit about how OnePlan can help you with some of the things that we're going to talk about. And then as Robert mentioned, plenty of time, hopefully, for some questions and answers. So if anything doesn't make sense, throw it into that GoToWebinar panel and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about what's going on today, because it's kind of sort of weird. It's not like most of the economic uncertainty and downturn and bad economic conditions that I've lived through in the course of my career. This is really uncertainty. It's not necessarily about we're going to have a recession, there's going to be all these problems, we can't invest, there's going to be cutbacks. It's just that we're not really sure what's going to happen because we're living through economic times that are unfamiliar to us. And I don't want to get into politics, and I'm not an American, so I have no right to talk about American politics, but we're in an era where we've got policies that are, to a greater or lesser extent, being driven by personality as opposed to a more reasoned economic approach that we might be more useful, or more traditional is probably a better word than reasoned. So we've got all these things going on that impact the ability to do business. And I've got that graphic on the right-hand side there, the supply chains, the costs, the whole inflation or lack of it, or runaway inflation. This is the geopolitical situation, which not just in North America, but globally now is creating a degree of uncertainty. Domestic policies in different countries and in responses to different countries. And then we've got that whole customer sentiment, is how do customers feel in different industries? And that varies maybe depending on which market you're in geographically or which market you're in terms of industry. And then obviously technology, AI in particular that we're going to talk about today, is sort of running rampant and causing more disruption all over the place. So we're living in a time where actually the global economy is not bad. It's not boom, but it's certainly not bust either. But we have got a lot of this. Can we invest in this area, or do we need to hold back? If we are going to invest, how much? There's a focus in a lot of the organizations that I work with right now on flexibility. They're still going to invest, but they make sure that they've got some reserves, financial and people, in order to adjust and adapt if they need to. If things go in a different way than they expected, if tariffs increase or decrease or shift, if other factors impact their ability to do business within their market, within their industry, or if it impacts an industry entirely, if a major breakthrough in AI causes more disruption or more opportunity, they want to be able to respond quickly to that. So there's still investment happening, but maybe not investing everything we possibly could because we want to make adjustments. So that's sort of the background to what's going on. I'm going to talk next about the people first element of resource management. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Robert to put up our first polling question. And I want to get your thoughts on what you think people were, well, you'll see the question, what you think is actually going on and what your organization is doing about it. So Robert, can we launch that first poll, please, if you haven't already? Let me have a look and see. There we go. All right, so which statement best describes your organization's response to the current economic environment? And you can see I've given you a few options there of scaling back investments, continuing to invest as normal, but keeping an eye on things, increasing investments to try and take advantage of what's going on, not made any changes, or still actually trying to figure it out. So I'll give you a little bit of time to respond to that. Jose, I'm going to be really unfair, and I know we didn't talk about this, but let me bring you in on this one and sort of see what you think people might say.
Right, it's interesting. We in our discussions with customers and prospects, there's definitely a tendency towards look to reduce or be prepared to reduce as conditions are changing, which means that the PMOs and portfolio leaders need to have scenarios and data at hand to respond to leadership.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's just a heck of a lot that we just don't know right now. But, all right, I think we've probably given people enough time to vote. So let's end and share the results. There you go. So look at that. No one is increasing. No one's treating it as normal, but also no one's scaling back. So either business as usual or still figuring out what we need to do. So, well, let's see whether we can help you as to what you should do. So let's close that down, and we'll go back to the presentation. There we go. There we are. All right. So now let's get into some resource management strategies that work. And we're going to talk about resource management and AI, but let's start with something that is so fundamental that we almost take it for granted sometimes and don't necessarily give it as much focus as we should. And that is that while we talk about resource management, what we're really talking about is people. I know a little while ago, the Agile community got very frustrated at the term resources and said, look, it's not resources, it's people. The term resource management comes from traditional project management, where we were talking about all kinds of resources. It might be raw materials, it might be equipment, it might be people, but it wasn't just people. But these days, in a lot of industries at least, we are focused primarily on people when we talk about resource management. And the only way that any project succeeds, even in this current world of AI, is because of the people working on them. If you've got a team that works well together, they can overcome most problems. If you've got a team that isn't working together or doesn't have the right skills for the work that needs to be done, or there's not enough people, or those people aren't in the right place at the right time, then even a potentially booming project can fail miserably. And the only way that you can create an environment where projects can succeed is by having people who want to work on them, where they feel engaged, they feel that the organization is supporting their efforts, they feel as though they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. And when we're living in this environment where everything is uncertain, that makes individuals feel uncertain. We're not talking about a separation of organizations and people. People live in this uncertainty as well. We all, as individuals, are part of our companies. We're part of the projects and the PMOs that we're working on. But we're also people with families, people who are having to make personal decisions in a time of uncertainty. We understand those risks. And when we live in something where we don't know what's going to happen next, and it could be one of many different things, that causes concern. It makes us worried. It makes us feel as though there's greater risk to our lives, to our work than normal. So when we're looking as organizations at how we can best manage that, we have to focus on the people all of the time. It's not just about moving numbers about to increase utilization or to allow more work to be done. It's about understanding how we do that while still considering how we maintain and ideally improve the engagement, the motivation, the drive of our people. It's making sure that all of our teams, all of the time, feel supported. Not just you're empowered to make decisions, but if you make a decision I don't agree with, I'm going to yell and scream. It's about knowing that you can make decisions, you can drive things forward, and the organization will support you, even if things don't work out the way that we want them to. It's about focusing on the environment. PMOs are not focused on projects, they're focused on the environment in which those projects are being done. And that has to address all of the elements that impact the people. It's not just that resource management is a self-contained task, it's that resource management exists within everything else that is happening within that project delivery environment. If the organization is doing well, people will feel better. If the organization is struggling, people will feel worse. It's part of the environment. It's one of the things we have to focus on. We obviously have to deal with the traditional resource management concerns of over-allocation, but we also have to recognize that under-allocation is a problem. If we have the wrong skill sets or the wrong experience levels, and we have people who aren't assigned to a particular piece of work, they're not going to feel engaged either. And at a time when there is so much uncertainty, they're going to think, no one's assigned me to any project for a while. Does that mean they're about to get rid of me? That can almost be worse than being over allocated, when at least you know that you've got a lot of work to do. It may be too much work to do, but at least your job's reasonably secure. And we have to do all this in an environment that is transparent, in an environment where there is effective two-way communication. And two-way communication doesn't mean here's the message, oh, what do you think, and then ignore it. It's allowing people to really communicate, share their fears, share their hopes, share their aspirations, share their ideas on how things can be done better. It's about the people first. We're going to talk a lot about the technology in the next few slides, but we must focus first on the people, because that's what really makes a difference. So now let's talk a little bit about the details of this. Complex environments exist in all industries, all work areas these days. But if we distill it down, project delivery, portfolio management is all about three different things. It's about understanding the planning piece, the strategic portfolio priorities for the organization. We need to increase market share, increase profitability, generate 27% more revenue, reduce costs by 18.3%, increase customer satisfaction by 2 points, increase employee satisfaction by 3 points, reduce risk by however much, comply with all the new regulatory requirements. There's no shortage of priorities that have to be delivered against, although hopefully we do prioritize those so that not everything is a number one. But we have to make sure that that piece is in place first. That's the foundation that everything else is built on. If we don't know as an organization what it is that we need to do, we're never going to be successful. And it's not just something that happens with the executive level. Those are the people that are driving the priority setting, but it needs to be communicated to all areas of the business so that everyone has that context for the work that ultimately gets done. Why are we being asked to do what we're being asked to do? How does it benefit? How does it drive value to the business? Then we start thinking about the work, and this is what we tend to think about more about defining the portfolio of investments, the strategic portfolio management element, where we say, okay, this is where we're going to invest. These are the major initiatives that we're going to pursue. And then each of the epics, the projects, the initiatives, the programs fit into the digital products, fit into that series of investments, that work that contributes to the priorities. And we have to make sure that we do that in such a way that we understand where are we going to be able to make the biggest impact? Where are we going to be able to deliver solutions that actually work and that people want to buy, or that improve efficiency, reduce risk, whatever it is? And how do we manage the risks around that work? But then we get to the bottom, we get to the resources, because at the end of the day, priorities and work are just theories. Nothing actually happens until we start talking about the resources and start dealing with putting people to pieces of work and actually generating results as a result of it. And that means that we have to understand not just the traditional resource capacity, do we have enough people, but it's, do we have the right skills? Do we have the right experience levels? And where are the potential bottlenecks and problems? Because it doesn't matter whether you've got 10 resources or 10 million resources. There is always going to be one spot where there's a pinch point, where there's a bottleneck, where there's potentially a single point of failure or a single point of dependency. We also have to make sure that we understand how people feel. At the end of the day, if everybody feels as though they're under pressure to deliver, that the organization needs them to give everything they've got and not make any mistakes, it's not going to work out that way, because that pressure, that stress is going to drive people to feel unmotivated, less engaged, more likely to quit, or certainly not more likely to focus on giving everything they've got. And then we have to think about how can we keep that environment and make it better over time. And then we have to recognize, as if not all of that wasn't enough, that this isn't a one-time thing. This is a continuous cycle, especially in uncertain economic times, where those priorities will shift, whether that's because of the emergence of AI, whether it's because of some kind of policy shift, whether it's because of a new opportunity or a new threat that's coming up in the marketplace. We don't just set the priorities and forget them. We adjust and adapt, which means this cycle is going to repeat multiple times. And if we're not ready for that, we're facing some serious consequences. And the only way you can be ready for that is if you can adapt the work and the resources in particular. You have to make sure you can adjust so that you can shift these priorities and implement those changes. Think about your personal life as a real example here. If you earn $1,000 a week and you spend $1,000 a week, well, if something changes, whether or not that's an opportunity to go on vacation, you need a new car, you need to make repairs, you've got a problem. Because you don't have any spare resources, financial in that regard, because you're spending every dollar that comes in. Same thing in our organizations when it comes to the people to do the work. We can't make a change if all of our people are already committed to things. So we have to keep those reserves, whether it's making sure we spend a little bit less than we bring in if possible, or whether or not it's keeping a few people back so that we can adapt and adjust, but not keeping too many people back that we're losing out on what we could be delivering and creating frustration amongst underutilized resources. It's a really difficult model. And when you start drilling into these details, it gets very complex very quickly, which is why we need to think about the AI element of this. Today's strategic portfolio management tools are able to do what they're able to do because of all the analysis and analytics that goes into them. AI can take that to a whole new level. At the end of the day, the software should be able to enable the business to make better decisions in less time. And that's really where we bring in the SPM, the Strategic Portfolio Management tools, powered by AI to give us that ability to make those different decisions in less time. When we can model different scenarios, we can look at different portfolio mixes. What if we do this subset of projects? How does that differ from this subset over here? What's the same? What's different? How does that utilize the resources better? How does it distribute the resources across the different skill sets, across the different functions, across time within our business cycle? We look at different scenarios and say, okay, this one looks promising. Let's do a little bit more analytics. If we did that, what happens? Where do we run into problems with our resources? Where is the time period where we're making a lot of change or where we've got opportunity? We need to make sure that we do that across the entire organization. People want to work in different ways. People need to work in different ways. You can't have the same process and the same software for your plan-driven projects as for your agile projects. It doesn't make sense. Things will be inefficient and ineffective if you do that. So you need to have at least two sets of work management tools, and you need to allow both of those to integrate with your strategic portfolio management. At the same time, you're going to have to manage the finances. You're going to have to manage the professional services. You're going to have to manage the customer demand and the impact you're getting from CRM solutions. You need to be able to get visibility into all of that across every function, across every department, across every region of the business. Otherwise, you're only going to make partially complete decisions. You're going to be working with only some of the information you need to make the best decisions. It might allow for quicker decisions. It won't allow for better decisions. And then, of course, all of that changes. Reality happens. We put all our plans together, then we start doing the work and we find that some of those plans weren't quite right. It takes a bit longer than we thought. There's actually more story points in that feature than we thought there was going to be. So we need to be able to update this so that we can contribute to ongoing replanning and adjusting so that we can change everything when we need to keep the work aligned with the priorities to deliver the benefits that we need. If you've got AI driving that, it takes a lot less human effort to run those models. And the AI is pointing you in the right direction to actually analyze the results of those models, those analyses, so that we can actually make better decisions. That then takes us to this intelligence piece in the middle, where we say, okay, how do we determine the best fit to do the work that actually gives us what we need? The analytics, the AI, the software can give us the raw intelligence. It's not just data anymore. It's actually intelligent analysis of that data. But we still need the people to then say, okay, this is how we understand, this is how we interpret it, this is the set of projects that we're going to pursue, this is the reason why, this is how it enables the business outcomes that we need to be achieved. That has to happen with all of that people stuff that we talked about. Are we making decisions that empower our people? Are we making decisions that encourage them to feel engaged and motivated? Are we giving them the information they need so that they find it easier to buy in? We make sure that the project managers are focused on leadership, not on management. And again, AI helps us there. When we apply AI at a project level, now we can start automating some of those manual tasks, freeing up PMs to actually focus on the people. It's not about eliminating people. It's not about eliminating work. It's about automating work so that the people can focus on higher value, people, leadership focused tasks that actually make a difference, that actually drive us forward. And again, because everything changes all the time, we need to continuously monitor, adapt, adjust, support what's going on. We also need to recognize that flexibility isn't just something we need to build into portfolio delivery. It's something we need to build into every aspect of our business. It's not about, here's the plan, this is what we're going to deliver, these are the investments, these are the programs and projects. It's also about, this is how best we think we can deliver it. But if it turns out that we're causing friction, we're causing tension, we're causing people to feel frustrated, demotivated, disengaged, then we can adjust there. It's about making sure that the people we keep back, the reserves, the ability to adapt and adjust is appropriate. Can we start more work? Should we start more work? Should we wind back? Should we slow down a little bit? How do we keep this going in such a way that we drive our people forward? Every year, there is a survey done on global engagement. A major consulting firm does this globally. The last statistics that were available were for 2023, and it was shocking. It was less than 1/3 of global employees who were actively engaged. That means 2/3 aren't. But here's the scary bit. That was the highest the number had ever been. But when you look at organizations that put people first and actually live that, then the engagement's over 70%, more than twice as good. You don't need me to tell you what kind of difference that actually makes to organizations. You don't need me to tell you how much better the return on investment for those organizations is going to be. So we have to put this people first. And if we leverage AI appropriately, it allows us to do that in a way where people really feel as though they're understood, they're listened to, because the decisions we make are not just smart for the business, they're also smart for the people who have to deliver that work for the business. And that's where we really make a difference. All right, so what's my bottom line on this? Well, your people drive the success and the failure of the business. Ultimately, it's all about how we make things better. If we're not making things better, we're making things worse. And if you make things worse for people, they're going to leave. And if they don't leave, they're going to disengage and you wish they would leave, bluntly. If we're going to succeed, we need strategies that leverage technology, leverage data, but focus on people. We need to make sure that we're utilizing our people appropriately. And that doesn't mean, oh, well, they're working 40 hours a week, we can allocate them 40 hours a week. That's not realistic, and we all know that. We need to make sure that we allow people to provide meaningful feedback. And we need to make sure that we're using the right technology to do that in the right way. Now, I did promise before we actually started that I would give you something reasonable that you could take away, some action items, some actual ways to apply this concept. And I'm going to do that in just a second. But before I do, we have a second poll. So, Robert, if you can throw up our second poll, please, I would appreciate it. Let me just flick back to there. We can see it. There we go. All right. So, what's the biggest opportunity to improve resource management in your organization? I've talked about these different concepts, but what do you think it's going to be? Is it about becoming more people focused? Is it about improving alignment between the priorities, the people, the work, and ultimately the benefits? Is it about providing better visibility into who's available, who's allocated, who's over allocated, under allocated? Or is it about better modeling and analyzing the different resource models? And I'll give you a little while to offer your thoughts on that one. And Jose, I didn't give everybody an all of the above option, which I know was really evil and cruel of me, but what do you think people might say on this one?
Visibility and alignment as it's coming in, I think I would agree with that. And in the PMO improvement surveys, it's interesting because you mentioned in your prior slide feedback loops, and it was interesting that executives highlighted stakeholder engagement as one of the primary improvement areas that they're looking from PMOs, which I think goes along the lines of the alignment discussion. So, and the feedback loop that you were mentioning.
Excellent, I agree. All right, so let's share the results with everybody. I think everyone's had a chance to vote. There you go. 3/4 of people saying improving alignment between the priorities, the people, and the work. And 1/4 saying it's the visibility that needs to be focused on. It's good to see that no one felt that there was a need to become more people focused. I'm glad that that's something that, at least I'll give everyone the benefit of the doubt and say that they're already focused there. And the modeling and analysis wasn't seen as a big issue either. All right, so let's close that one down. And I will go back to my last slides, and then I'll hand over to Jose in just a second. All right, so what can you actually do? How can you actually make this work? Well, it's about recognizing that nothing happens without people. I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care whether you're a niche supplier or whether you're a market dominating leader globally. It's about people. Give people a reason to engage with you. Think about what people need. At the end of the day, we all work because we have to. We work to pay for the rest of the lives that we want to live. So give people a reason to feel as though they're doing something worthwhile, that they can enjoy what they're doing. Think about their needs when you plan, and then make sure that those plans are realistic. Make sure that expectations can be achieved. Not easily, it's stretch, that's fine, but make sure that you're actually giving people a purpose, something that they can do and feel as though they've achieved something. And that means you've got to have people-focused leadership, not just task-focused leadership. At the end of the day, manage the people, the work will follow. You've got to use the right technology. Newsflash, spreadsheets are not enterprise planning tools. They never have been, they never will be. You've got to have the right software with the right capabilities integrated across the enterprise. You've got to be able to leverage complete, accurate, and timely data for every piece of work all of the time. And you've got to make sure that your analytics and reporting, preferably AI supported or AI powered, is giving you the ability to drive the right decisions. It gives you insight, so you're making the best decisions you can in the least time possible. Then you need to make sure that you're creating an environment where people can consistently deliver. Support flexible work methods. Whether that means hours, whether it means location, whether it means ways of working, doesn't matter. How do your people want to work? Give them the tools, give them the environment, and then keep out of their way. Make sure that you recognize that every single person is going to have slightly different priorities. What works for one doesn't work for the other. So allow that. Allow people to support their own preferences. When you're allocating your resources, make sure that you're not asking someone to work 4 hours a day on one project and then 4 hours a day on another project with no time to transition, because it doesn't work like that. And also recognize that even if someone is being paid for 8 hours a day, they've got other commitments. Not every single minute is going to be committed to active work on a particular project. There's going to be corporate meetings, there's going to be corporate emails, there's going to be time lost, because that's what happens. So make sure that you've got realistic standards. Create that environment. It's not even about managing the people or managing the work. It's about managing the environment where people can give of their best. Focus on that and you'll start making a real difference in very little time. All right, I am going to stop there for just a second. I will stop sharing. Jose, I will hand over to you. I think you're going to talk a little bit about how OnePlan can actually help organizations to achieve this, and then we'll have some time for those questions at the end.
Thank you, Andy. That was very insightful. Let me see if I can get my screen. Let me know when you can see it. So I want to take you through several stages of the resource planning, capacity planning process to highlight how some of the concepts that and insights that Andy shared. So I'm starting within OnePlan in my ideas, and just for those of you that haven't been in our prior webinars, these are all different areas, by the way, which represent capabilities of the solution or specific list and content for parts of the organization. So, for instance, we have your enterprise architecture, which is where the enterprise architects would come into. In another platform demonstration, which I'm not going to show here, we actually highlight how OnePlan can be used by all different business PMOs as well as the major EPMO or IT PMO that might be collecting all of the projects within the organization. Here is my innovation, and I start here because this is the first opportunity really that you have to begin thinking about the use of your resources, the use of your teams in order to make that decision. In this case, very simply, and it's something that we see often within our customers is, we're just using a very simple resource estimate t-shirt sizing. So, it's a low effort, you have a medium effort there, and a high effort with the number of hours. Again, is the first approximation that you could of of your resource usage. And we manage a life cycle, as we've shown before. We have a workflow in order to manage that intake, and we're trying to get to an approval state, which in this case, this particular request is gone into approved. As I've said before in our webinars, you can control the business case. You can use guided prompts as part of the of creation of the content. So, very helpful here. This is completely and totally tailorable to your specific needs. In this case, we even have some key results here. But the main point is that at the very least, you want to have that initial t-shirt size of what you think it's going to take to do this. And you can then, have them all prioritized. In this case, I've included the resource estimate as part of the column, as well as the prioritization, budget, benefit, and the approval status. You could be creating different views, by the way, here. In fact, there's one more field that I added, which was the investment category, because in this case, in the event that you're in a situation where you have to focus on, run and customer satisfaction, or any particular priority based on the changing market conditions, that uncertainty that we're trying to manage, you need to have the ability to respond to leadership with the inquiry. So in this case, I have these set of requests. What can I do? So you could be, by the way, having some prompts already recorded for you, and I'm going to actually take a different tack, focusing on resource capacity planning, and I'm going to ask not only to rank the projects based on that resource estimate, but also to focus on run and customer satisfaction. So, if leadership came to you and say, okay, we really need to focus only on the minimum to run the business and keep our customers satisfied, based on resource estimates, based on priority, what should I do? What should we be doing? And here we have a response that you can, consider. So the table shows run the business and customer satisfaction categories prioritized based on that resource estimated level. So you can take this and run within, verify it obviously against the data set, and here we have a response. Leadership comes and says, what should we be focusing on? It's really these sets of projects that focus, as you see, on run the business and customer satisfaction. So it's only 7 projects in terms of having them be approved. So from here, you could go and either make that decision, make some changes based on your approval status, and move forward. The next level, which we've seen also, and I encountered this recently, is a situation where you're actually going a level deeper in that innovation. So I'm still in innovation. In other words, I'm evaluating the business case, and you see that I have a number of ideas. We do allow for voting in case you want to engage others in the organization. In this case, I also have associated key results, and in this case, the investment category is reflected as a strategic theme, which is perfectly fine. But the difference in this analysis, and I'll go and change to my another view that just focuses on those that are approved, is in this analysis, what we did is that we actually added the resource plan as part of the request. So OnePlan has a very robust resource capacity planning capability. So what we've done is we're beyond t-shirt sizing now. I'm still in innovation, but I'm looking at resource plans by generic resource. And what that means is that, over a period of the year of this time frame, I have the generic resource that's actually going to be required to actually complete this. So again, another level of specificity in terms of resource capacity planning, which you can include, and OnePlan gives you that ability depending on how you do this. Now, in this case, I'm only focusing on approved, so I've gone through that decision, and then you could be exposing, okay, do we have the resources that we need for that set of projects? So, you can see here that it looks like we're pretty good. And I will take that off in a second just to make sure. But here you could also be using Sophia GPT in order to understand, what the resource, or whether there are any conflicts with it. I'm not going to focus on this one. We'll move on to the next level. But here you could be, invoking and using Sophia GPT in any capacity for, in this case, I just said, to provide a risk management based on the data. And it's giving me here some a response in terms of what I need to do. What I'm going to go next is we've gone through and approved these, and the way we do that is either through the workflow or through reorganizing, which is really we convert the item to a required plan type, in this case a project, and then we place it where we're going to actually be executing it. So now all of that business case information becomes part of the project record together with the resource estimate that I just showed you. So you could be taking that resource estimate and now trying to make it a reality through the work that a project manager is going to do. So I'll return here and I'll go to my portfolio. So the second level of analysis is, well, we have our proposed projects that we brought over. So we have their state and we have their status, in terms of all the indicators that we're managing. The next level, very easily, you could be deriving a effort health indicator in terms of what you need to be focusing from a resource standpoint. And very simply here, all of these, if you recall that resource plan that I showed earlier, I'm bringing it over, which means that, it's off track, which means that there's a difference between the committed resource plan, what we plan, and what's actually scheduled from the resource manager. So, and you can make that comparison within OnePlan. So here, we could see exactly where the differences are between schedule and committed. And that indicator is showing us that we have an issue. We could be going directly into the work plan where we actually can also expose the resource plans to show where the issue is. But from here, you could go from summary to very specific views. So we do have an effort summary view, which brings about the committed effort, scheduled effort, actual hours. In this case, we're actually grouping it. Again, trying to look for those discrepancies of variance where we could be over allocating our teams, as Andy mentioned. I'm going to move it forward since we're talking about using generative AI. So I've created a view, and I think that's one of the interesting parts of OnePlan. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to take command of your data. I've added my prioritization and my benefits. So really here, the question is, can I use generative AI to have a better decision, perhaps on elements that I need to consider. So here we have a prompt that I'm using the data that I included in the columns: prioritization score, budget, benefits, resource estimated level, rank the projects in terms of highest priority versus the resource estimate. And I have here the ones that I should be, again, focusing on run the business and customer satisfaction in terms of the ones that I should be focusing on. And I'm going to go ahead and exit here. From here, we could be, let me see if we have one of our canned. Here's an interesting one. If budgets are cut, budget cuts are needed, which projects should be canceled based on strategic importance, or which ones should be put on hold? And based on, again, that data, because that's part of the challenge with Gen AI, you need to make sure that you have the correct data in order for the analysis to take place as part of the prompt. And here we have projects that are with low progress that should be considered, projects with high budget and moderate progress, and epics with low importance score. All of these are projects that are within our currently under consideration that could be put on hold or even canceled based on our current economic conditions and the uncertainty. So this is the second level, and again, it could be as easy as taking the projects that were highlighted and then just literally put them on hold, and then going into the resource plans directly, and then releasing the resources either within the committed resource plan or within the schedule, or in this case, actually, it's actually coming from an integration from Azure DevOps. So maybe that those tasks and stories can be moved into the future sprints in order to release the resources, not necessarily lose the planning, but just put them into the future because we're not going to do them now. They're on hold. So that's the second level, and this is using again my portfolio. So you have the ability to expose that data in order to see your allocations directly, and together with the list of projects. Again, focusing on prioritization. The next level that you could be going to is what we call our modeler. And within our modeler, we have the ability to have, basically create different models. So we start with a set of projects that we want to consider. And then based on prioritization, and here I have my Gantt exposed, I'll take it off. You can see here that I have my estimated start end date. Again, you have to make sure you have the correct data, committed effort, resource estimate. Remember that resource estimate that I was using initially. You can use Sophia GPT with the modeler also in order to achieve that resource balancing. Here we have some prompts based on canceling or postponing projects based on reduced budget, which can take into account the resource question, and then you have your response in terms of what you should be considering. ADO integration plan, IT project professional. What that means is what I can do is take these projects and literally deselect them. In other words, put them on hold and not include them within the scenario. So I'm creating a scenario now that is not taking them into account, and then I can go about and save that scenario. If I wanted to dig deeper before I go ahead and save it, I could be looking at the resource load and also at the sequence, when they're going to take place, because here I can also, although it's not using Gen AI, I could be making changes to the sequencing and creating a scenario that addresses the over allocation. So in this case, I have a work planner project. I also have, the IT DevOps project, which, by the way, is the one that we were told to take off, so I can take it off. And now you can see that particular over allocation is resolved. So by using my recommendation by Gen AI, I can now apply that within the scenario, and then go ahead and save the scenario. So what is, in this case, I have saved other scenarios, but I could do this, go ahead and save my new scenario based on the new analysis provided by Sophia GPT. And then the final the final analysis, where you can actually access at any point in the life cycle, is really going through and looking at all of the resources here, and seeing exactly where you might need to look for the easiest one here is if you go by role, we can take into account exactly how many resources, maybe from a vendor management standpoint, should we actually be looking to go outside of the organization in order not to overload our folks as our team members as Andy stated. And here I'm just going to use one. Again, we want to make sure that we use make sure we have all the data available. And I will go ahead and here I have one that is already stated, but I'll try another one that has to do with more with, in terms of our generic resources, which ones should I be looking to take outside the organization in order to overcome the over allocation. Again, that thinking about our people, making sure that they're not over allocated, and it's going through and doing analysis on, the FTEs that are required in order to overcome the over allocation. So here we have, some clear, obviously developers is a clear one that came out, and I think that that was pretty clear from the heat map, and then developers and product development. But again, using GenAI to its full capacity, making sure that I have the correct data in order to understand, in this case, where can I go and seek resources outside the organization. So I hope you've seen how we enable you to use GenAI to use analysis, do better resource capacity planning and take care of of our team members to make sure that they're not over allocated. So here I use one of the ones that we already had saved, which actually gives me a similar analysis in terms of projects that should be placed on hold based on resource over allocation. So it's a slightly different take on the projects and the resources. Okay, I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy so we can proceed to our next section of our presentation.
Thanks, Jose. It's amazing when you see the capabilities that we've got now with AI-enabled SPM solutions like OnePlan. It really is a game changer in terms of what can be done. All right, so let me just share that again. So we got a little placeholder for the questions. And Robert, I think we do have a couple of questions that have come in. Do we have any questions, Robert? I think we do.
Yes, we do. This one is for you, Andy. How have you seen strategic, dangerous. How have you seen strategic resource planning evolve during economic uncertainty compared to times of growth?
Great question. It's this period of uncertainty, it's been different. It's sad to say, but in the past, in my career, when there's been uncertainty, usually associated with downtimes economically, the consideration of human resources, people, has been less, because the attitude has been that, well, it's an economic downturn, so people aren't going to find it as easy to leave. We've got pressure to deliver, so everyone's going to have to just suck it up and deliver and work hard and whatever it might be. I think there's been realization in the last few years that that's not necessarily the best long-term attitude, and while it might work in the short term, when things do improve, those people that felt used and abused are going to vote with their feet and go somewhere else. So that's how it's been in the past. This time, because it truly is uncertainty as opposed to bad economic conditions, people are trying to figure it out as they go. I'm seeing organizations that are saying, okay, let's make sure that we're keeping flexibility in our people, but we want those people to feel that they're still engaged with us, that they recognize we're going to be investing a little bit less, so they may not be quite as busy, they may have periods of downtime, but they're still critically important to us. So the communication is improving to sort of help people understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening and how they have a role to play. I'm also seeing an improvement in some more forward-looking organizations where leadership are going to some of the more senior, more experienced resources, especially from a PMO function within project delivery, and saying, hey, this is what we'd like to do. How can we best deliver that within the confines of the organization that we have right now? And that's giving people the ability to drive more innovation, to drive solutions, to actually sort of determine how best to go about doing the work. So I think it's been great from an empowerment standpoint. But having said that, there are also organizations that are just continuing to ignore the needs of their people, and they're going to be struggling a little bit in the future. So the short answer is it's made things a lot more complicated. It's made things a lot more different in the way that organizations treat it. But I think this current period of uncertainty is broadly positive, and I think we're going to see that more once things have stabilized a little bit. But awesome question. Love that.
Would you, Andy, would you say burnout is real in all during all different economic conditions?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, there is always going to be a few people or a larger group of people who feel used and abused, who feel burned out, and that's contagious. You know, burnout is a physical and mental illness, or at least it manifests itself that way, and it's a contagious illness. When one or two people feel that way, other people are going to start to feel disengaged, demotivated, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. It can be disastrous for organizations. And the only way to treat burnout is to prevent it, not to try and treat the symptoms.
Eventually it catches up, yeah, with the organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for that one. That it kind of seems to be a reoccurring theme of treat your people well and make sure that they are motivated and aligned with the organization.
Which
See
shouldn't
the
be difficult,
value.
really. I mean, when you think about it, Robert, it's common sense. But as my mum used to say, the problem with common sense is it's not very common.
Unfortunately, that can be the case, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Looks like we got time for one more question, perhaps. And this one kind of keeps with the theme of that burnout and focusing on your team and the morale across the board. When burnout is starting to kind of rear its ugly head, or you know that there's that time for a push that will cause burnout, what have been some of those successful tactics that organizations have used to keep teams aligned and motivated for longer periods of time?
I think it is communication. And it's a standard answer, but it doesn't make it any less true. Real, meaningful, transparent, two-way communication. Talk to your people. You don't have people in your organization who want to see the business fail. They're coming to work, they're committing a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of effort to their role, their career, their job. They want to be successful. They want to be part of something that works. But too often they feel ignored. And that's what really drives the burnout and the different activities that lead to burnout, the disengagement and all the rest. If you just have meaningful conversations, if you recognize that the people doing the work are highly skilled, that's why you've got them doing the work, and they can interpret information just as well as anybody else, sometimes better because they're closer to the work, and they can come up with better approaches, better solutions. They know what's going to make them feel valued. They know what's going to work. They know what's going to be something that they feel positive about. So work with them, engage them in a meaningful way, support them through the process, recognize that there's no perfect answers and sometimes mistakes are going to happen. But if you really build a strong relationship between leadership and every single part of the organization, you can go a long way. And if you don't, it doesn't really matter whether economic times are good or bad. Things are not going to work out very well. The only reason people tend to move less in less positive economic times is because it's harder to move. But you can prevent it if you just make some simple changes to how you operate.
I think here's where the PMO can play a vital role
Mm.
because, I showed a lot of numbers and analysis, um, but behind those numbers are, as you're saying, Andy, people, and the trade-offs that you present to leadership have to take into account that you might be burning some folks out. So um, it's not only about the cold analysis, but also taking into account that there's a few resources within those grids that are always the ones that are red, and part of the trade-off is that we're really affecting them. So that's where I think the PMO can come in and play a larger role in calling that out to the stakeholders.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, thanks for the input, guys. I will go back into hiding, and I will allow you guys to do the final wrap up. So appreciate it, and thanks again.
Thank you, Robert. Really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for the questions. So Jose, you can probably speak to this a little bit better than I can, but there's information there on how to get in touch with the OnePlan, and I believe that there are trials available, demos, workshops.
Thanks everyone for joining us today. If you're interested in seeing your data and your organization within the OnePlan solution, there's many opportunities to do that. We have our trials, we have our roadmap workshop, and we have our one-on-one demos that we can do for you. I'm sure that there's always improvement that can be done within the PMO, and your leadership is expecting you to have that improvement. So take advantage, to engage OnePlan in order to develop that roadmap and how you can go about achieving those improvements. In this case, with resource capacity planning.
All right. And I think we're done. Jose, thank you so much. I really
Andy.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great working with you, and look forward to other opportunities to share your insights with our customers. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll speak to you in our next webinar.
Thanks everyone. Have a great day.